Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world you think you know, but trust me, you don't. This isn't the story of knights in shining armor or fair maidens in tall towers. It's not a tale of royal courts or brave crusaders. No, tonight's journey sinks much, much lower into the murky, fly-infested world of medieval hygiene. So before we scrub into this historical mess, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, leave a comment and tell me what time it is where you are right now. I always love seeing who's joining this little midnight time machine from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft, hypnotic hum. Slide under the covers, shift your weight just a bit, and let your eyelids grow heavier with every word. Tonight's journey, why medieval hygiene was absolutely revolting. Let's get something out of the way. Early people were dirty. Not, oh no, I skipped a shower today. Dirty. I'm talking sleep in the same tunic for 6 months while sharing a straw bed with fleas, your cousin, and maybe a goat dirty. You didn't get clean. You got used to being filthy. That was the standard. And when we say hygiene, don't think of scented soap, bubble baths, or neatly folded towels. Think of wooden buckets filled with lukewarm rainwater, greasy fingers drying on crusty aprons, and teeth brushed with twigs, if at all. Toothpaste? Never heard of it. Floss? Might as well have been black magic. And the idea of washing your hands before eating? That was more suspicious than sanitary. This wasn't an age of self-care. This was an age of survival. Water was often contaminated. Bathing could be dangerous. And let's not even get started on toilets, actually. Don't worry, we absolutely will get started on toilets. You're not getting out of this that easy. But behind the dirt and disease was a fascinating reality. People didn't want to be disgusting. They weren't choosing filth. They were doing their best with what they had: poor access to clean water, limited resources, terrifying superstition, and zero knowledge of germs. Imagine trying to stay healthy when no one understands why wounds get infected, or how lice carry disease. Your doctor might suggest bleeding you with leeches, or rubbing your armpits with onions. It wasn't medicine. It was medieval guesswork wrapped in prayer. And here's the real twist: it wasn't all just peasants. Nobles stank too. Queens bathed once a month, if that. Kings wore perfumed gloves to hide the smell of unwashed hands. Your royal robes may have glittered in candlelight, but underneath, you still reeked like sweat, mildew, and damp wool. So, as we wander through this grimy chapter of history, keep one thing in mind. Medieval hygiene wasn't just gross, it was a full-body experience. From lice-infested beds to shared toilet sponges, everything was just a little too intimate. And sometimes, a little too fatal. But don't worry, you're safe now. You're wrapped in modern comfort, with running water, hot showers, toothbrushes, and private bathrooms that flush. And as the night grows darker, we're going to walk together into this stinking world, one slow, unsettling step at a time. No need to hold your nose, just let the sounds fade around you, let your breath slow down and settle in. We're going back deep into the unwashed folds of time. Welcome to the Middle Ages, and welcome to why medieval hygiene was absolutely revolting. You open your eyes, but instead of your soft mattress and clean sheets, you're lying on something scratchy, lumpy, and vaguely damp. It crinkles when you move. It smells faintly of wet straw, old sweat, and possibly goat. Your neck itches. Your scalp itches. You can feel tiny legs crawling through your hair like they own the place. And technically, they do. Welcome to the medieval bed. Your new roommates, fleas, lice, and regret. The ceiling above you is low, wooden, and stained with a pattern of black soot from years of smoke curling up from the hearth. A faint draft snakes in through the thatch roof, carrying the fresh morning scent of dew, manure, and someone nearby dumping a chamber pot too enthusiastically. The blanket covering you is made of wool, not the fluffy kind. This is heavy, coarse, woven by hand, and last washed well. Let's not talk about that. It stinks of mold, smoke, and the sort of body odor that only comes from sleeping in the same tunic for half a year. You shift, pulling the blanket up around your shoulders, but it's too late. The lice have already noticed you're awake. You try to sit up, your back cracks like firewood. Your joints ache. You're 27 years old, but your spine feels like it's been through 3 winters and 1 minor famine. You slept on a straw-stuffed sack, and during the night, the straw shifted again, leaving you half-supported, half-sinking into the uneven wood planks beneath. A splinter jabs you in the thigh. A warning from the floorboards. You get the message. This is not a luxury suite. This is survival. You look around. There is no your room. There's just the room. A 1-room hut shared with your entire family, and possibly a neighbor who just needed a place to sleep during lambing season 3 years ago. You're not alone. To your left, someone's snoring loudly. To your right, a child stirs under a thin sheet, coughing into the wool like it might absorb the germs. At the far end of the room, in the gloom, your mother is already up, feeding kindling into the hearth with the mechanical rhythm of someone who's been doing it since she had her first child at 15. There's no privacy. Not now, not ever. Everyone sleeps in the same space. Parents, children, cousins, and sometimes livestock. A chicken clucks softly from her perch in the corner. She lays an egg. It rolls across the dirt floor, bumping gently into your brother's foot. He doesn't notice. He's still face down in a pile of hay. The air inside is thick. It's warm, sure, thanks to the fire, but also heavy, like it's been breathed by too many lungs and never quite left the room. There's no chimney. Smoke from last night's cooking still hangs in the rafters, drifting slowly toward the holes in the thatched roof that double as a ventilation system and accidental squirrel entrances. You breathe through your mouth. It doesn't help. You reach up to scratch your scalp. Bad idea. The movement disturbs a nest of lice who have apparently claimed your hair as sacred territory. They retaliate immediately. You sigh and lower your hand, defeated. In the distance, a church bell rings. Loud, unapologetic. It's the medieval version of an alarm clock. Clang first, ask questions, never. Your neighbor grumbles, rolls over, and lets out a sound that confirms he's still alive, but deeply annoyed. Someone somewhere outside is already yelling at a donkey. The day has begun. You swing your legs over the side of the bed, careful not to step on the dog. He sleeps wherever he wants. Today, it's beside your feet, curled up like a ball of mud and loyalty. He lifts his head briefly, gives you a look that says, "Good luck out there," and immediately goes back to sleep. Your feet hit the floor. It's cold, not just cold wet. There's condensation from the morning dew soaked through the dirt floor during the night. Or maybe someone spilled something. Maybe the roof leaked. Maybe you don't want to know. Whatever it is, your toes are now involved. You shuffle toward the fire, hugging yourself for warmth. The hearth is still glowing, but barely. Someone banked the embers before bed, covering them with ash to keep them alive till morning. Smart. Starting a fire from scratch would take time, and time is something you don't get to waste. You're medieval now. You rise early, you work hard, and you complain only to the dog. There's a stool near the hearth. You sit carefully. One leg is shorter than the others, so you learn quickly how to lean without falling. You stretch your hands toward the embers. They're warm, but not warm enough. You wait. The heat will come. Eventually. Maybe. Your mother ladles out the dregs of last night's stew into a cracked wooden bowl. It's mostly cabbage water and hopes. You'll eat that later. First, you need to make yourself presentable. And here comes the fun part. There's no mirror, no sink, no soap, just a wooden bucket with water drawn from the well and a rag that's been used by 4 other people already. You splash your face. It's freezing. Your skin stings and your nose starts to run immediately. No towel. You dry off with your sleeve or just drip dry while staring at the fire. You try not to think about how the water probably sat uncovered all night, attracting whatever creatures like to swim by moonlight. You don't ask questions. You don't have answers. Your hair? A mess. You pat it down with wet fingers. That'll have to do. There are no combs, unless you count the bone one your uncle whittled last year. And he's using that on his beard, which is suspiciously clean compared to yours. You pull on your tunic. It's the same one you wore yesterday, and the day before, and maybe the week before that. It's stained, stretched, and it smells like wood smoke, goat, and human suffering. You stop noticing after a minute. It's part of your skin now. Someone farts. No one apologizes. You step outside and immediately regret it. The early morning mist clings to the village like damp wool. The mud squelches beneath your feet, clinging to your bare ankles. Someone's already dumping a chamber pot into the drainage ditch. The stench greets you like an old friend, warm, intimate, and impossible to ignore. You take a deep breath. Wrong move. Your throat tightens. Your stomach gurgles. A pig trots past, utterly unfazed, followed by a toddler holding a stick like it's a sword. You nod at the pig. The pig ignores you. Fair. You haven't even started your day, and already your skin is itchy, your feet are dirty, your tunic is wet, and the air smells like rotting cabbage and regret. But you're alive. You're awake. And this is your world now. So go ahead, try not to think about the fleas in your bed, the lice in your hair, or the fact that no one has ever heard of deodorant, because this is medieval hygiene. And you're just getting started. You've made it out of bed. Sort of. You're up. But it doesn't feel like a victory. Your hair itches. Your armpits itch. Your eyes sting. Your breath smells like something crawled into your mouth in the night and gave up on life halfway through. Time to freshen up. Except, remember where you are. There is no sink, no toothbrush, no mirror, no tile floor, no fluffy towel waiting for you next to a bottle of minty mouthwash and lavender-scented lotion. There's a bucket, a wooden one, with cold, cloudy water that's already been used by at least 3 other people this morning. It smells faintly of iron, mildew, and something you hope is moss. There's a rag floating in it. You pick it up, and it drips across your tunic like a wet accusation. You splash your face. It's freezing, not refreshing cold. No, this is bite your skin off. Forget your name cold. Instantly your nose runs, your fingers go stiff, and your teeth start complaining about something called nerve endings. You grit them and carry on, because this is medieval hygiene, and it doesn't care if you're uncomfortable. You reach for the tooth cleaning stick. It's not yours, it's shared. A piece of frayed wood, maybe birch or hazel, that's been chewed into soft bristles on one end. You scrub your teeth with it, or at least the front ones. There's no toothpaste, no fluoride, no promise that this does anything at all except move yesterday's pottage from one corner of your mouth to the other. And when you're done, you rinse your mouth with water. Not fresh water, just water. And then you spit into the fire. No floss, no mouthwash, just hope. Your breath smells slightly less horrifying now, but don't worry, so does everyone else's. Now, let's talk about your skin. You haven't had a full bath in weeks, maybe months, and that's normal. Baths are a thing, but not an everyday thing. For most peasants, it's more like twice a year, and only if you're lucky or itchy in too many places. When you do bathe, it's in a wooden tub, shared, communal. Someone pours water into it, usually heated over the hearth. You sit in it, soak, maybe scrub with a piece of cloth or straw. Then someone else uses the same water. Then another. By the end, it's more broth than bath. But today, no time for a tub. Instead, you do what everyone else does. You wipe yourself down with a damp cloth. You focus on the face, the armpits, the hands, the important parts. And maybe if you're feeling extra fancy, you rub a bit of rosemary or lavender on your wrists. Not because it's clean, just because it covers the stench. And you stink. Everyone does, even the rich. They just cover it with more perfume. But you smell like wool, wood smoke, and a dash of barnyard. Congratulations. That's what survival smells like. Now that you're clean, it's time for breakfast. Except medieval breakfast doesn't come with pancakes, bacon, and a side of optimism. This is the morning meal, peasant edition. You squat near the fire, there are no chairs, and hold out your bowl. It's wooden, chipped, and permanently stained with the ghosts of meals past. Your mother ladles in a scoop of something lumpy. It lands with a wet plop. This is pottage. It's not soup. It's not stew. It's something in between. Thick, greyish, and made from whatever was still edible last night. Grains, maybe. Root vegetables if they're in season. Sometimes a handful of beans. Always cabbage. Always. It smells earthy and old. The texture, like someone boiled sadness until it thickened. You stir it slowly. There's a lump in it. Could be a turnip. Could be something else. You don't ask questions. You eat. The spoon is wood. The handle has been gnawed down by time, fire, and probably a rat. You slurp. It's hot, sort of. It fills your belly. That's enough. There's bread, too, if you can call it bread, a small, dark, rock-hard hunk of barley loaf. It's gritty, literally. Sometimes, flour is stretched with ground-up beans or old bran or even powdered tree bark. And if the millstones weren't cleaned properly, you're also chewing sand. But it's food, and food means strength. You bite down and immediately worry about your molar. Next to you, your younger sibling is licking the inside of a pot, trying to convince themselves it's a treat. Someone passes a crust they found on the floor. No one complains. No one hesitates. It goes in a mouth before you can blink. What about something to drink? Water? Technically, yes. Realistically, not unless you have a death wish. Water is rarely clean. It's drawn from rivers, wells, and streams that double as sewers, animal baths, and laundry stations. You can drink it, but you'd better be good at praying and near a privy. So you drink ale. Yes, in the morning, everyone does. Even the kids. It's weak, barely alcoholic, but it's brewed, which means boiled, which means safer than water. It's thick, brown, cloudy, and tastes like bread that gave up. You sip it slowly. It's not good, but it won't kill you, probably. If you're lucky, there's a chunk of cheese, hard, yellowish, and made months ago. It smells like a foot and tastes like regret. But it's protein, and today you'll need it. Because this day, like every day, is long, cold, and filthy, and it's only just begun. Now that your stomach's full of gritty pottage and warm beer, and your body is half damp and itchy, you're ready to face the day. You smell bad, you feel worse, and your teeth hurt, but you're clean, by medieval standards, which means still revolting, just a little less than yesterday. And that's the best you can hope for. You've scraped your teeth with a twig, wiped your armpits with a shared rag, and filled your stomach with something warm and suspicious. Now comes the next daily ritual. putting on clothes that neither fit, flatter, nor forgive. Let's start with the basics. You own one outfit. One. It's not in your wardrobe, it is your wardrobe. A single tunic made from rough spun wool or coarse linen, depending on what part of the year it is and how well the last harvest went. It's scratchy, heavy, and smells like a mixture of sheep and sorrow. It's also stiff, not from starch or tailoring, but because it's never been washed properly. Maybe you beat it on a rock last month. Maybe you hung it outside during the last rainstorm and called it clean. Either way, it's full of dust, grease, and the haunted ghosts of past meals. You pull it over your head. The collar is stained. The sleeves are tight in the wrong places and loose in the wrong places. The hem drags in the mud. You've outgrown it, but there's nothing to grow into. Fabric is expensive. Tailors are for nobles. And fashion? That's a word that hasn't been invented yet. Underwear? Optional. Most peasants went commando. If you were lucky or modest, you might have a linen shift underneath. But it's just as dirty as the tunic. And, since you sleep in your clothes, eat in your clothes, and occasionally wipe your hands on your clothes, your entire body becomes one big portable stain. You add your cloak. It's made of heavier wool and smells worse than the tunic. Why? Because it's been rained on, slept in, and probably used once to carry firewood, possibly a wounded chicken. And definitely your little cousin when he fell in the mud. There's a tear in the corner, held together with a bone needle and whatever thread you could salvage from an old sock. Your shoes? If you have any, they're barely shoes. Made from stiff leather, hand-stitched by someone guessing at your foot size, they offer all the support of a damp tortilla. They let in water, let out warmth, and rub your ankles raw. The laces are twisted scraps of hide. You walk carefully. One misstep and you're barefoot in the muck, where sharp rocks, thorns, and the occasional surprise turd wait in ambush. Many peasants just went without. Barefoot through mud, snow, straw, and the occasional broken roof tile. Over time, your feet become calloused, hard, and slightly tragic, but at least you save on shoelaces. Your hair? Still tangled. You rake your fingers through it, which only wakes up the lice, and reminds you that the last time you washed it, it was in a stream next to 2 cows, and a man emptying his bowels into a bush. There's a comb somewhere, maybe a wooden one, shared by the family, but good luck finding it. It was last seen in your uncle's beard. You don't ask questions, you just smooth your hair down and move on with your life. And now that you're fully dressed in wool, sweat, and pestilence, let's talk about your home. It's not a cottage, it's not a cabin, it's a box. A mud and stick rectangle held together by animal dung, hope and prayers muttered during the last rainstorm. This is your shelter, your castle of filth. The walls are made using wattle and dauber technique that involves weaving wooden sticks together, then smearing the gaps with a mixture of mud, straw, and manure. It works. Sort of. The result is a patchy, crumbling surface that keeps the wind out, about, as well as a paper towel. When it rains, and it always rains, the water seeps in through every crack. The thatched roof sags under the weight of the moisture. Sometimes it leaks, sometimes it drips, sometimes a frog falls from it. The roof itself is straw, tied down with ropes and sticks. It houses spiders, birds, and the occasional curious rodent. You try not to think about them at night, but you always hear them, scratching, chirping, watching. Your floor? Dirt. Not metaphorically actual dirt, sometimes covered with straw, sometimes with rushes, sometimes just left bare, so your feet can absorb the dampness of the earth and the full horror of spilled soup, chamber pot drippings, and chicken footprints. If you're lucky, your family adds fresh rushes every few weeks. If you're very lucky, they take the old ones out first. Otherwise, The floor becomes a mat of decomposing plant matter, embedded with bones, fleas, and things you don't name for fear they'll grow stronger. There's no chimney, just a hole in the roof to let the smoke out or let the rain in, depending on the wind. The hearth is the heart of the house, but it fills the room with smoke every time someone adds fuel. You squint through the haze, eyes watering, lungs adjusting. The smoke chokes out fleas and mice, so that's a plus. It also chokes you. You take shallow breaths and keep your head low. Windows, a luxury. If you have them, they're tiny and covered with oiled cloth or horn to let light through and keep the cold out. Spoiler, they don't. Mostly, they just trap the smell in. Furniture, minimal. A few stools, a wooden bench, a lopsided table, a bed frame if your family's lucky, more likely, just sacks of straw in the corners, flattened by years of restless, uncomfortable sleep. Everything creaks, everything tilts, everything smells like smoke, damp wool, and age. There are no closets, no wardrobes, your belongings hang from pegs or lie in piles in corners, a dented metal pot, a clay mug, maybe a wooden bowl passed down through generations, and gnawed at the edge by an anonymous rat. And privacy? What's that? You live with your parents, your siblings, maybe your grandparents, possibly the neighbors, definitely the animals. Everything happens in this one room. You sleep together, eat together, argue together. You hear everything, every cough, every snore, every other sound. You've mastered the art of pretending you're deaf. So there you are, dressed in wool, living in mud, trapped in a room with too many people, too many smells, and not nearly enough soap. Your skin is itchy. Your home is smoky. Your shoes are optional, but this is life. And no one's complaining because they're too busy trying not to freeze to death. So go ahead, step outside, face the day, and try not to track any new diseases back in with you. You step outside, and instantly, your feet disappear into the mud. It sucks at your ankles like it wants to keep you. Cold, wet, and full of things that used to be animals. It's not a road, it's a soup of footprints, dung, rainwater, and sorrow. You take a breath. Wrong move. The air outside is worse than the air inside. It smells like wet dog, wood smoke, pig sweat, and fermented cabbage. Your neighbor is already outside, hunched over, emptying a bucket into the communal drainage ditch, a polite way of saying human waste river. It splashes, and you immediately regret having eyes. But there's no time for regret, because work is waiting, and it doesn't wait politely. You are a medieval laborer, which is a nice way of saying human tool. The work depends on your village, your season, and your social rank, which, let's be honest, is somewhere between don't starve and die of exposure. You don't get to pick a dream job. You don't even get to pick a job. The land picks you. The Lord picks you. The weather picks you. And all of them hate you equally. Today, you're headed to the field. You carry a wooden hoe, worn down from years of grinding against stone and soil. It's splintered, uneven, and permanently stained from someone else's blood. Maybe yours. Maybe your uncle's. The handle gives you blisters. The blade gives you splinters. It's perfect. The field is half a mile away. You walk there, slowly, barefoot or in your collapsing shoes, through cold muck, over rocks, past pigs, goats, and that one cow that always looks at you like it knows something. Your job today? Dig, weed, harvest, plant. Depending on the season, you might be reaping grain with a curved sickle that seems specifically designed to remove fingers. You might be planting seeds one at a time in rows so crooked they make monks weep. You might be hauling baskets of turnips so heavy they leave bruises on your thighs. You work until your hands go numb, then red, then raw, you keep working. If it's cold, you shiver. If it's hot, you sweat until you stink like a boiled onion wrapped in sheep fat. If it rains, you keep going. There's no rain day, just wet death. You bend, you lift, you dig, over and over again. And if you think this sounds boring, try doing it for 12 hours while someone watches you to make sure you don't sit down. Speaking of watchers, meet your friendly neighborhood overseer. He's the Lord's man, which means he owns exactly 0 acres of land, but holds infinite power over your ability to keep your fingernails. He carries a stick. He doesn't smile. He believes strongly in the power of yelling and possibly mild beatings. If you slow down, he notices. If you speak, he glares. If you stop, he reminds you that the Lord owns both this field and your family's only goat. You mutter a prayer, not for safety, just that the sun sets faster today. But what if you're not in the fields? Lucky you. Maybe you're in a trade, a tanner, a butcher, a miller, a blacksmith's apprentice. Better title, worse smells. Because trades in the Middle Ages are where comfort goes to die. If you're a tanner, you spend your day knee-deep in barrels of animal urine and rotting hides, scraping off hair with a blade so dull it's basically a spoon. Your job is to turn dead things into leather. You do it with lime, knives, dung, and regret. You smell so bad your friends cross themselves when you pass. If you're a miller, you grind grain in a creaking wooden building filled with choking dust and angry mice. Your lungs turn into flour. Your clothes are white, not from status, from airborne wheat death. If you're a blacksmith, you work in a forge so hot your hair smolders. You burn yourself daily. You swing a hammer until your shoulders feel like wet clay. You cough black. You sweat black. You dream in sparks. And your tunic is never not on fire. If you're a butcher, you know anatomy intimately, but only in a remove-the-head-first sort of way. You wade through blood. Your floor is slippery. Your apron is stiff. Your knife is sharp. Your nose is permanently haunted. If you're a child, good news. You get to join in. Children start working young. By 5 or 6, you're scaring crows, carrying water, herding goats, or picking weeds. By 10, you're hauling, chopping, spinning, sewing, or dying in an accident no one writes down. And if you're a woman, you're doing everything. You rise early, tend the fire, make food, feed animals, feed children, clean rushes, spin wool, weave cloth, scrub pots, dig roots, breastfeed a baby, shush another, wash your husband's bloody tunic, and if you have a spare minute, maybe give birth, then go back to weeding. Life is a marathon of fatigue, hunger, and permanent dampness. There are no weekends, no holidays, unless you count feast days where you walk 10 miles barefoot to sit in a cold church for 4 hours behind a man who hasn't bathed since Candlemas. Lunch? A crust of bread, a cup of ale, maybe an onion. You sit on a rock and chew in silence. The sun is hot, or it's not. It doesn't matter. You go back to work, because if you don't eat. If you don't, the Lord notices. If you don't, someone else takes your place and your tools, your hut, your dignity. And dignity is already in short supply. So you keep digging, keep weaving, keep hammering, keep walking. And when your hands crack open from cold and work, when your back bends and your knees snap like old fence posts, you count the hours until night. Because night means rest. Kind of, not really, but we'll get to that. For now, there's still work to do. Always, you've made it halfway through the day. Your hands are scraped, your back is screaming, and your only reward so far is a muddy onion and a second helping of boiled regret. But even in this bleak backbreaking world, one thing matters more than work, more than food, more even than survival. And that's your soul. You don't own land, you don't own your time, but you do own your soul, and it's in constant danger of being snatched, scorched, or eternally damned. Welcome to medieval belief, a world where religion isn't a part of life, it is life. Every moment, every breath, every unpleasant sensation involving chamber pots and lice is under the watchful eye of God, and also 1,000 saints, one very busy parish priest, and probably your neighbor who just saw you scratch your armpit in a vaguely sinful way. You are a Christian because there are no other option, not legally, not safely. Your spiritual routine begins before sunrise, with a whispered prayer and maybe a crude sign of the cross drawn in the air with dirty fingers. You don't speak Latin. The Bible is not in your language. But that doesn't matter. You know the rhythm of belief like you know the feel of splinters in your palms. Your day is framed by bells. The Angelus rings at dawn. You pause your hoe mid-swing to bow your head. You murmur something half-remembered about grace and mercy, even while your stomach growls loud enough to drown out salvation. You know the commandments. Sort of, you know you're supposed to fear God, honor the saints, confess your sins, avoid temptation, go to Mass, and never, ever think about naked people, especially not on Sundays, or during Lent, or when it's raining, or if there's a full moon. The Church tells you that sin is everywhere, not just in what you do, but what you think, what you dream, what you accidentally think. While looking at the neighbor's daughter who bent down to pick turnips and revealed a frankly scandalous ankle, you feel guilty. You always feel guilty. That's the idea. Your priest is a man of authority. He owns books. He wears robes. He speaks the language of angels, or at least of scholars. You don't understand most of what he says, but you nod, kneel, and agree that everything is sinful, including your dreams, your desires, and your weird toenail that looks like a devil's horn. Confession happens often. You walk into a small wooden box or just sit in the back of the chapel and whisper to a man who already knows your secrets. He asks specific questions. Very specific. Uncomfortably specific. You wonder how much of this he's just making up. You confess. You lie a little. You say sorry. Then you're forgiven, unless you die with sin on your soul, in which case it's straight to hell. And you believe in hell, not metaphorically. Hell is real, a fiery pit of eternal torment, with demons who poke you with hot forks while reciting your sins back to you in the voices of disappointed family members. The fear is constant. Die without confession. Hell. Steal bread. Hell. Touch yourself. Extra hell. Miss church. Hell. But socially awkward hell where your neighbors notice. So, you go to church. Everyone does. Even if you're sick. Even if you smell. Even if your only shoes are held together with twine and forgiveness. You kneel on cold stone. You sing songs you don't understand. You inhale incense that mixes with body odor and the subtle aroma of wet livestock. And you feel something, not peace, not joy, but the quiet satisfaction of knowing that maybe, just maybe, today you won't go to hell. At least, not immediately. But religion isn't just sermons and guilt. It's magic too. The world is full of signs, omens, and invisible rules you break at your peril. Drop a piece of bread butter side down, bad luck. Hear an owl hoot near your house, someone's going to die. Lose a tooth and feed it to a dog. That dog now owns your soul. Get bitten by a flea during Mass? Probably a witch. You believe in saints. Hundreds of them, each with a job. Street Anthony finds lost things. Saint Sebastian cure plague. Street Margaret protects women in childbirth. Street Jude handles impossible causes. like your hope of ever finding clean soft. You wear charms, tiny pieces of bone, bits of cloth, knots of hair tied with prayers. Not because you're superstitious, but because your cousin once laughed at a saint's statue and immediately broke his toe. Coincidence? Never. You believe in relics. Your village might have a bone fragment from a saint's finger, preserved in a silver box no one's allowed to open. You don't question it. That bone has more power than your landlord. You kneel. You touch it. You ask it to fix your aching knees. You believe in curses. And more importantly, in people who give them. Witches. They live on the edge of town, or in the middle of it. Or maybe they're your aunt who talks to her chickens too much. Anyone can be a witch. Mostly women, always suspicious. If your crops fail, your cow dies, or your bread doesn't rise, you find someone to blame. And if you're accused, good luck. No lawyer, just water. They tie your arms, throw you in a pond. If you sink, you're innocent. If you float, congratulations, you're a witch, and you're also on fire now. Most people don't understand theology, but they understand fear. Fear of hell, fear of the devil, fear of priests, fear of storms, dreams, comets, frogs, left-handed people, and sneezing more than once during a feast day. You're told to behave, to be clean spiritually, if not physically, to be humble, to obey, to fear the Lord, and serve your master, and wash behind your ears, only if time allows, and no one thinks you're being vain. Because vanity is sinful, pride is sinful, lust is very sinful, everything is sinful, except suffering. That, apparently, is holy. So you keep suffering, you work hard, you pray harder, and you hold on to the tiny hope that, if you do everything right, maybe one day you'll get to heaven, where there are no fleas, no mud, no moldy pottage, just golden streets, angelic music, and maybe, just maybe, a bath. The sun has begun its slow, slanted descent toward the western horizon. Your stomach growls again. It's been growling all day, but now it's louder, angrier. It's not so much a complaint as a threat. And you know what it wants. Dinner, or what passes for it in the medieval world. You walk back from the fields, bones aching, fingers stained with dirt, and the pleasant realization that you're now fully crusted in dried sweat, old wool, and the faint but unmistakable scent of onion ale burps. It's time to eat. And when it comes to medieval food, let's set expectations low. Very low. You arrive back at the hut. The same smell greets you. Damp straw, boiled cabbage, wet dog, feet, and the kind of meat odor that makes you think, I really hope that's meat. You've been too long in the forge of the outdoors, but stepping inside feels like diving into a woolen armpit that someone set on fire and then tried to extinguish with broth. Dinner is on. A bubbling pot hangs over the hearth, suspended by iron hooks and sheer optimism. Inside, pottage. Again. Of course it's pottage. It's always pottage. A bubbling, unholy stew of barley, leeks, dried peas, leftover bones, mystery herbs, and whatever else your family found today that didn't scream when boiled. This isn't a recipe, it's survival. You sit cross-legged on the floor. No chairs, not enough stools. The firelight flickers across grimy faces as your family ladles out the evening's offering into mismatched bowls, clay, wood, one made from half a gourd, and a prayer. The pottage lands in your bowl with a sound like someone sighing into a swamp. You dip your spawn in. It's warm. That's the good news. The bad news. You've eaten this exact meal every day for months. You can now identify each ingredient by texture alone, including the ones that probably shouldn't be there, like the accidental beetle that fell in 2 days ago, and no one had the heart to remove. You chew slowly. Every bite is stringy, lukewarm, and vaguely suspicious. You think you just crunched a pebble. Water? Risky. Instead, there's ale. Always ale. The same murky brown drink you had this morning. Weak, flat, and thick enough to leave sediment in your bowl if you're not careful. But it's safe. Boiled. Brewed. Not likely to give you dysentery. It's also warm. Of course it is. Nothing is cold unless you want it to be hot. If it's a feast day, rare but real, you might have cheese. Not creamy, delicious modern cheese. This is hard, waxy, yellow-brown cheese with the consistency of carved wood and the aroma of a sock filled with hope and stored in a cellar for 6 years. It's glorious. You eat your portion slowly, cherishing every salty, pungent crumb like it's gold. If you're very lucky, there's meat. But that's a huge if. Meat is expensive, rare. You don't get it often unless someone dies or something dies and no one asks too many questions. Usually, it's a bit of pork fat boiled into the pottage, just enough to make it taste like meat once walked past the pot. After dinner, the real event begins. Not a banquet, not a concert, just being together. This is your entertainment. You sit around the fire with your family, wrapped in your cloaks, scratching at your flea bites, and listening to someone's uncle retell the same story about that one time he saw a cart fall over and crush a goose. You laugh politely. You've heard it 12 times. It's still the funniest thing that's happened in 3 weeks. If your village has a tavern and you've got a few coins or enough onions to trade, you might head down for something resembling a good time. The tavern is a smoky, cramped wooden hut filled with shouting, farting, and the smell of beer-soaked straw. The air is thick with pipe smoke, spilled ale, and the sort of breath that could wake a ghost. There's music, sometimes. A man with a lute that has 3 strings and 2 working fingers plays the same tune on repeat while someone claps offbeat in the background and an old woman sings something that may or may not be in Latin. People are drunk, always. Not for fun though, it helps, but because it's the only reliable way to forget that their house is on the verge of collapse and their left foot has been infected since last harvest. Someone is arm wrestling. Someone is vomiting in the corner. Someone else is dramatically passed out with a chicken standing on his back like it just won a battle. You sip your ale, pretend not to notice the bugs floating in it, and smile. This is relaxation. This is fun. If you're lucky, there's a travelling performer in town. Maybe a minstrel with a harp and a ballad about a knight who definitely didn't exist. Maybe a juggler who can toss 3 turnips in the air before one of them explodes. Maybe even a dancing bear, chained, tired, and deeply confused about why it's in this village surrounded by shrieking children. Or maybe you get a mummers play, a wandering group of actors who perform a tale of sin, death, and resurrection using costumes made from rags and a severed pig's head. It's dramatic and deeply disturbing. But it's better than staring at a wall and naming the cracks. Back at home, even children find ways to entertain themselves. They chase rats with sticks. They throw pebbles into buckets. They invent elaborate rules for a game involving dung, 2 spoons, and a pine cone. Sometimes someone juggles. Sometimes someone breaks their arm trying. Either way, everyone claps. Because in a world where entertainment is rare, even failure is worth cheering for. As night approaches, things quiet down. People retreat indoors. The fire burns lower. Someone snores. Someone mumbles a prayer. Someone else mutters about the neighbor who keeps feeding garlic to the goats and ruining the milk. You sit near the hearth, rubbing your belly and feeling the pottage gurgle like an old man in a tub. Your teeth ache, your feet are filthy, your tunic smells like beer and defeat. But for a moment, you're full, you're warm, you're surrounded by people alive and not currently on fire. And in the medieval world, That's the closest thing to joy. Your stomach turns a little as the fire dies down. You tell yourself it's just the pottage, or the ale, or the onion you found under the bench and ate without asking questions. But deep down, you know the truth. It could be anything: a chill, a curse, a demon, the will of God. In the medieval world, illness isn't an inconvenience. It's a warning, a threat, a mystery wrapped in phlegm and fear. There are no hospitals. Not really. There are no antibiotics, no vaccine, no reliable treatments. Not even the idea of germs. Disease is everywhere, and the only consistent rule is this: if something hurts, it's probably going to kill you. You wake in the middle of the night. Your head throbs. Your throat burns. You're sweating and shivering at the same time. You try to swallow, and it feels like your body is lined with gravel and fire. Your mother wakes up and touches your forehead. Her hand is rough. Her expression is worse. She doesn't say anything, just wraps a cloth around your head, mutters a prayer to Saint Sebastian, and sits beside you with a wooden bowl filled with cool water and silent dread. Because she knows what this might be. It starts like this always: a small cough, a small fever. Then comes the swelling, the sores, the death. Welcome to the medieval medical system. Let's start with the basics. Doctors are rare. They're educated. Technically, they've read texts by Galen and Hippocrates, men who died over 1,000 years ago and were still considered cutting edge. A physician might be able to diagnose your symptoms, but treatments usually involve some combination of these: bleeding you, giving you herbs, asking if you've made God angry recently. If you're rich, you get a physician who shows up with a bag of iron tools and a book written in Latin. If you're poor, you get the barber surgeon. That's right, your local haircut guy is also the village expert in pulling teeth, setting bones, draining pus, and sometimes removing bits of your skull to let out the evil spirits. He's got a razor, a bucket, and no formal training. Hope you're feeling lucky. Let's say you've got a fever, mild one. You're told to drink a tea made of wormwood, sage, or yarrow bitter herbs boiled until the water smells like failure and regret. You sip it slowly, trying not to gag, and hope it doesn't make things worse. Maybe someone tries cupping, placing hot cups on your back to draw out the bad humors. Maybe they tie a toad to your arm and say a prayer. Maybe your aunt brings a poultice made of garlic, pig fat, and crushed snails and rubs it on your chest while muttering 3 Hail Marys and 1 suspicious rhyme involving goats. This is science. This is hope. And if your symptoms don't improve, time for bloodletting. Your veins are opened with a knife or a leech. Yes, a real leech. Plucked from a swamp and slapped onto your skin like a slimy little vampire with job security. They believe illness comes from an imbalance in your bodily fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. If you're sick, you clearly have too much of something. So let's get some of it out. Does this work? No. But everyone pretends it does until you pass out. Now, if you're lucky, it's just a fever. If you're unlucky, it's something else. Something that comes fast and leaves a trail of dead behind it. Like plague, you hear it before you see it. Whispers in the village. Another house boarded up. The priest wearing a cloth soaked in herbs under his nose. The air smells of vinegar and panic. Then come the carts. Then come the bells. And then silence. Plague moves fast. One day you're laughing at a joke. 2 days later, you're buried in a shallow grave by men who don't make eye contact. Boils, fever, vomit, death, and no one knows why. Some say it's bad air miasma. Others say it's a punishment for sin, for vanity, for dancing too much on saints' days or letting your goats look too smug. Everyone prays harder. No one bathes, just in case water opens the skin and lets the illness in. And Still, people die. Even smaller illnesses are dangerous. A cut on your hand could fester, could spread, could kill. Toothache? That's your nerve dying, and possibly your future. Childbirth? A holy miracle and a death sentence rolled into one. Many women don't survive. Many babies don't either. In fact, death is everywhere. You don't reach old age by default. You survive to it. And even then, old means 40. You sleep next to the fire, wrapped in your cloak, listening to someone cough and someone else whisper a prayer. You think about your cousin, who had the same cough last year. You visited her grave last week. You think about how many people you've lost and how many you've watched die. The fear becomes part of you. You don't wait to get sick, you assume it's coming. You try to keep clean, not for beauty, but because dirt invites demons. You wear charms, whisper to saints, avoid certain crossroads, and never ever look a black cat in the eyes. You listen for sign, a twitch in your eyelid, a cold breeze when the fire is roaring, a dream about crows. These things mean something. You attend funerals often. There's no embalming, no fancy coffins, just a simple shroud, a wooden board, and a quiet burial in the churchyard. If the ground isn't frozen solid, the priest mumbles, the bell tolls, and you wonder how long before it's you. You go home. You scrub your hands with ashes. You sit by the fire, eating stale bread, and wondering if your throat feels scratchy or if you're imagining it. You try to sleep, but your nose is stuffy. Your stomach gurgles, and you think, is this it? But you wake up, still breathing, still sore, still tired, but alive. And for now, that's enough. You wake up sore. You always do. The fire's gone out. The room is cold, damp, and filled with the muffled coughs and snores of people who never had the luxury of sleeping alone. Someone's already up, probably your mother. She's moving quietly, kneeling by the hearth, blowing life into the embers with the same sigh she's been exhaling for 20 years. Because in this world, before anything else, the woman worked. Let's talk about women. If you're a woman in the medieval world, your life is short, hard, and endlessly repetitive. You are not the center of history. You are its engine, overlooked, overworked, and underappreciated. From the moment you can walk, you're learning how to help, how to carry, scrub, stir, pluck, twist, crush, knead, sew, grind, hush, and endure. There is no childhood. There is no rest. You are taught to be useful before you are taught to read, assuming anyone bothers to teach you at all. You cook. You fetch water cold, heavy, often far away. You grind grain with a hand mill until your fingers blister and your wrists throb. You feed everyone first. You eat last. You clean the floors not with soap, but with your bare hands and water that's already been reused once, twice, maybe 3 times. You mend clothing, patching holes in tunics made from cloth so worn it tears if you breathe on it. You spin wool, card it, dye it, and weave it all while keeping one eye on the pot, one on the baby, and one on your mother-in-law who never quite approved of you. And then there's childbirth. You don't just have children, you survive them, hopefully. There are no hospitals, no epidurals, no trained doctors. Just other women, mothers, midwives, neighbors who have seen it before and know the sounds to expect. There's no sterile sheet, no anesthesia, just cloths boiled in water and the screams of someone who knows that this might be the last sound she ever makes. Because childbirth kills. Often. If it's not the delivery itself, it's the infection that follows, or the fever, or the bleeding, or the fact that no one thinks washing your hands between births is even remotely necessary. And even if you survive, there's the baby. Infant mortality is so common, people don't ask, is it a boy or a girl? First, they ask, is it alive? And then, is it still alive? Most babies don't make it past their first year. Some don't make it past their first week. You love them, you name them, you dress them in rags, and carry them everywhere, because putting them down is dangerous. But you also don't get attached too quickly, not because you're cold, because you've learned not to hope too hard. If you are the child, your world is small, loud, and unpredictable. You're born into a house with no privacy, no plumbing, and no toys that aren't rocks, sticks, or goats. You're raised by people who love you but are too busy to coddle you. You're fed from the breast, then the pot, then the family bowl, which has seen more spoons than a tavern on a feast day. You get a name, sometimes more than one, especially if you're named after a dead sibling, which is common. You learn fast. You have to. By 3, you're helping carry things. By 5, you're watching animals. By 7, you're doing full chores. By 10, you might be apprenticed or married. If you're a girl and someone thinks your family has land or strong ankles, you don't go to school unless you're wealthy or lucky or male, and your village happens to have a monastery nearby that takes students. Instead, you learn by doing. You learn by surviving. You get burned. You get bitten. You fall in the mud. You cry. You wipe your face on your sleeve and keep going, because everyone does. Family life in the medieval world isn't cozy. It's communal. It's loud. It's functional. And it's very, very physical. You sleep together, huddled for warmth. You eat together from one bowl. You live together in one smoky room where every movement, every sigh, every bodily function happens within arm's reach of someone else. You don't say, "I love you." You don't write birthday cards. You show love by surviving next to each other, by giving someone the better crust of bread, by wrapping your cloak around a coughing child and staying awake through the night to rub their back with garlic oil and whispered prayers. That's affection. That's parenting. Discipline is simple. Obey or be punished. There's no therapy. No gentle talks about emotions. You disobey. You get hit. Not out of cruelty, but because time is short, patience is shorter, and the world is too hard for softness. You learn to stay in line. You learn to hush when the Lord passes by. You learn that if your father is angry, it's best to disappear for a while. Marriages aren't about romance. They're arrangements. If you're a woman, you marry who your father tells you to, often young, sometimes to a man twice your age, sometimes to a boy who also hasn't learned to shave or talk without coughing. Love is optional. Land, livestock, or labor is the real deal. If you're lucky, you grow fond of your spouse. If you're unlucky, you endure, because once you're married, that's it. You're his, legally, spiritually, physically. And if he raises his hand to you, you hide the bruises and pray for rain to keep him occupied in the fields. Old age, rare, respected, but also suspicious. If you live past 50, people start whispering. Maybe you know something. Maybe you've made deals. Maybe you're a witch. You walk with a limp. You sit by the fire. You tell stories no one quite believes. And eventually you fade into the smoke, into the coughing, into the memory of someone who once lived longer than expected. But even in all this harshness, family is everything. Your siblings share your food, your chores, your pain. Your parents give everything they have to keep you fed, even if that means skipping their own meals. Your children are your legacy if they survive. And in a world without privacy, comfort, or mercy, the bonds of shared suffering become the closest thing to love you'll ever know. The sun has climbed high, baking the village in a soft, miserable heat that doesn't dry the mud, but somehow activates the smell of everything unpleasant. You've worked all morning, you've eaten your lukewarm cabbage mush. Your muscles are burning, your knees ache, and your mouth is dry. Despite drinking something that vaguely resembled beer, and definitely had something floating in it. But don't think you're done. The medieval day doesn't come with a coffee break, or a siesta, or any concept of afternoon off. You work until your hands stop functioning, then you use your feet, then you keep going anyway, and in between all the labor, something else bubbles under the surface: conflict. Because when you cram dozens of people together in a muddy, smoky, one-road village with no plumbing, no privacy, and very few personal possessions, things get tense. First, there's the hierarchy. You don't live in an egalitarian paradise. You live at the bottom of a very steep, very slippery pyramid. At the top is the king, a man you'll never meet, never see, and never hear from, unless it's to send you off to war or raise your taxes to fund his fifth golden throne. Beneath him is your lord. He owns the land, all of it. You just live on it, farm it, build on it, bleed on it, but you don't own an inch of it. He can raise your rent, take your grain, take your pigs, demand your time, your labor, your oxen, your cart, all in the name of duty. And if you refuse, you lose your house. Or worse, then come the churchmen. They don't fight, but they hold power just as sharp. The priest may live simply technically, but he has books, wine, and the keys to both heaven and hell. He decides what's a sin, what's a curse, what's allowed. And if you offend him, you don't just face punishment in this life, you face eternal fire. He can denounce you from the pulpit. He can excommunicate you. He can tell your neighbors you consort with demons because you own a black chicken and once asked too many questions. And if the bishop comes to town, everyone straightens up, because nothing ruins a feast day faster than being accused of heresy during evening prayers. Then come you and your fellow peasants. You all stink. You all struggle, but that doesn't stop the petty wars. There's constant tension between families, between neighbors, between generations. Someone's goat keeps wandering into someone else's field. Someone's child took an extra turnip from the communal plot. Someone accused someone of giving their baby the evil eye. Someone else whispered that they saw your uncle talking to a cat in Latin. And even if these are small things, they add up. Because no one here has much, and what they do have is fragile. Easily ruined, easily stolen, easily spoiled by weather, rodents, or human spite. So people fight, not with lawyers, with shouting, with stick, with fists, and sometimes with fire. Let's say you're caught stealing a loaf of bread, a chicken, a chunk of cheese, not much, just enough to keep your family from starving. You're not given a trial with a jury. You're dragged to the center of the village. There's a post there, maybe a scaffold, and punishment happens in public. Maybe it's the stock's wooden boards clamped around your wrists and neck, left there for hours or days while people throw cabbage leaves and insults. Maybe it's branding, a hot iron pressed against your skin, so everyone knows you stole. Forever. Maybe it's a whipping, bareback, leather strap, no mercy. You're made an example because fear is a better enforcer than fairness. But it's not just the poor who get punished. Sometimes it's the different, the odd, the lonely, the foreign, anyone who doesn't quite fit. A woman who talks too much. A man who never married. Someone born with a limp. Someone who speaks another language. Someone who healed a sick animal and didn't immediately thank Saint Cuthbert. People notice and people are afraid. So accusations start to fly. Witchcraft, heresy, demon possession, these aren't rare. They're regular. You can be accused by a rumor, a dream, a weird smell. Then the priest gets involved. Then the Lord's men come. And then you might burn. It doesn't take much to ruin your life. A failed harvest, a single storm, a bad coin toss. There are no safety nets. There's no unemployment. If your ox dies, you beg your neighbors for help, or you starve. If your roof caves in, you sleep under a wagon. If your child falls ill, You pray and cry and grind up herbs until your hands go numb, and still sometimes they die. And everyone moves on because everyone's struggling. No one has time for your grief. Even moments of rest come with their own politics. You're at a festival, you're drinking ale, the music's loud, someone juggles 3 cabbages and a chicken. Everyone laughs. Then someone knocks over a mug, someone steps on someone's foot, and now there's a knife out. Fights break out fast and end faster. Someone's bleeding, someone's arrested, someone else is vomiting into a pig trough. You go home early again, so you keep your head down. You work, you obey, you bite your tongue because you know what happens to people who talk too much, take too much, or hope too loudly, and you want to survive. Even if it means swallowing your rage like a stone, even if it means watching injustice and pretending not to see. Because in a world where the only real law is power, and cleanliness is considered suspicious behavior, staying quiet is the only path to peace. You walk home, it's nearly dark. You hear someone crying in the distance. You hear someone singing in the next hut. You don't stop for either. You just keep walking because your feet are sore, your tunic is wet, and you have exactly one goal left today. Make it to nightfall. The sun slips behind the trees, casting long shadows across the village. The light drains from the sky not gradually, but with urgency. There are no glowing street lamps, no porch lights, no switches, just a creeping, smoky dusk that rolls in like a cold breath, turning your world into shapes, silhouettes, and slowly vanishing outlines. Night has arrived, and in the medieval world, night is dangerous. You hurry. Everyone does. You pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders, even though it's damp and smells like mildew and goats. The path to your hut is familiar, but in the dark, every bump feels like a hole. Every stick becomes a snake. Every rustle in the underbrush is either wind or something else. There are no flashlights. Just a rush torch, if you're lucky, soaked in tallow, smoking heavily, sputtering in the breeze. But most nights, you walk in the dark, eyes squinting, ears alert, heart pounding, because you know what lives in the dark. Bandits, wolves, fire, and sometimes something worse. People don't go out after sunset unless they have to, and if they do, they walk fast, heads down, carrying charms, muttering prayers to saints, known only for keeping bones intact and shadows at bay. Inside your hut, the fire is a weak glow. You bank it, pile a bit of ash over the embers to keep them alive till morning. But there's no real warmth. The air feels damp, heavy, filled with the scent of boiled roots, stale breath, and the waxy tinge of tallow candles burning low in corners. If you're lucky, you have a lantern. If you're not, it's just the fire and whatever's left of your eyesight. Shadows stretch across the thatch ceiling like fingers. Mice scratch in the walls. Fleas stir in the bedding. You shiver not from cold, but from the sense that outside your door, something is watching. You know the stories. Everyone does. Night is when spirits walk, when the souls of the unbaptized whisper in the wind, when the devil prowls for souls, when witches fly and curses settle onto rooftops like snow. Your neighbor once swore he saw a pale figure near the churchyard at midnight. No face, just long arms and weeping sound. Your aunt claims she once woke up to a cold breath on her neck and found her cow dead the next morning. A baby across the village stopped crying one night and never woke again. Coincidence? Never. Not here. You lie down. Not on a mattress. On a sack of straw slightly flattened, faintly damp, and full of things that jump when disturbed. You pull the wool blanket over you. It's scratchy. It smells like everyone who's ever used it. And it does not keep out the cold. You nestle close to your siblings, your parents, whoever else shares this space. Privacy is a myth. Sleep is communal. You all breathe the same stale air, hear each other's coughs, and hope no one rolls onto the only semi-dry spot left on the bed. Then the noises begin. A thump, a creak, a long, low moan from somewhere across the village. Maybe it's a dog. Maybe it's not. Someone groans in their sleep. Someone else murmurs a prayer. You try not to think about it. You try to sleep, but sleep doesn't come easy. Not here, not now. Because you know what night brings. Fires. In a world made entirely of wood, straw, and fabric, a single spark is an extinction event. You've seen huts disappear into flames in minutes, heard the screams, watched neighbors throw buckets of water onto a blaze as if hope itself was made of ash. So you listen for crackles, for heat, for the flicker of an orange glow. That means it's your turn. And if it's not fire, it's crime. The village has no police, just fear. Justice is handled in the morning, after someone finds a body. Until then, you're on your own. There are men who roam at night, desperate men, hungry men, drunk men, men who settle disputes with fists, blades, and the knowledge that no one will see it until sunrise. You've heard of travelers attacked on the road, of families robbed blind while they slept, of widows who disappeared and were never seen again except perhaps in dreams. Then there's death itself. It walks these roads at night. You feel it in your bones when the wind shifts and the fire sputters. You know the signs, the sudden silence, the strange cold, the sound of your own heartbeat in your ears. Death doesn't knock. It slips in, takes a baby, a wife, a father, leaves a space no one can fill, and a smell no one forgets. You've seen too much of it. You remember the plague year. You remember when 3 huts in a row went silent. You remember when the church bells rang so often, the ropes snapped. And yet, somehow, you sleep, not well, not peacefully, but eventually, exhaustion overwhelms even fear. Your body curls in on itself, hugging warmth like it might flee at any moment. Your hands twitch, your teeth clench. You dream strange, murky things, faces you can't name, voices from the woods, the sharp, coppery taste of blood. Someone snores, someone coughs. The lice in your hair continue their eternal square dance, and outside, the night deepens. In a few hours, the birds will begin, the fire will be rekindled, and you'll wake up to the same smell, the same hunger, the same mud-soaked chores waiting like patient executioners. But for now, for just this sliver of night, you sleep, wrapped in wool, surrounded by fear, pressed up against your family, listening for the breath of death and hoping it passes your door. And now you rest. You've made it through a day in the medieval world. You've crawled out of a straw bed shared with fleas and siblings. You've washed your face with cold, reused water. You've brushed your teeth with a stick and eaten pottage, flavored with doubt and sediment. You've dressed in stiff, scratchy wool that hasn't seen soap in season. You've walked barefoot through mud, worked in fields until your hands blistered, listened to prayers you didn't understand and fears you didn't speak out loud. You've breathed in smoke, wiped with leaves, swallowed beer that tasted like damp bread. You've worried about illness, sin, rats, and the possibility that someone might accuse you of witchcraft because your bread rose too high. And now, you're lying down again, in the same damp straw, in the same one-room hut. Only now, it's quiet. The fire has shrunk to a whisper. The air is still. Outside, the wind brushes against the thatch with soft, papery fingers. Something chirps a cricket, maybe, or something that eats crickets. But even those sounds seem far away now, softened by distance, dulled by fatigue. You're wrapped in your one cloak, your one blanket, your one life. And in this moment, There is nothing left to do but wait for sleep. It's easy to romanticize the past, to imagine knights and castles, to picture old towns as cozy candlelit scenes from a tapestry colourful markets, rosy-cheeked peasants laughing over fresh bread and jugs of wine. But that's not how it was. The truth is harder, heavier, more human. People were tired, dirty, cold, hungry, not because they didn't care about being clean, but because they couldn't be. Not like we can, not with what they had, not when survival left no time for luxury. Their lives were lived shoulder to shoulder with filth, not because they wanted it, but because it was everywhere. In their food, in their water, in the air, in their beds, in their bodies. They did their best. They prayed, they scrubbed, they boiled, they lit candles to saints and rubbed their children with herbs and whispered wishes into the steam of soups made from bone. And sometimes they lived long enough to laugh, to love, to remember. Sometimes they even found joy in a warm cup of ale, in a bread loaf that didn't go mouldy, in a fire that stayed lit through the night. Tonight, you have none of their burdens. No lice creeping through your scalp, no pottage to stomach, no fear that the well water might carry your end. You're clean, you're warm, you're breathing air that doesn't stink of smoke, sweat, or mildew. Your blanket doesn't crawl, your roof doesn't drip, and when you wake up tomorrow, you'll have choices. Soap, water, privacy, a working toilet, maybe even a real breakfast. It's easy to forget how rare that is, how miraculous really, to be safe, to be warm, to be able to turn on a tap and not fear what comes out, to sleep without fear of night, without someone coughing beside you in the dark, without the weight of daily death pressing against your chest like a sack of wet grain. So, take a breath now, a slow one. Let it fill your lung. Hold it. Let it out slowly through your mouth or your nose, however feels natural. There's nothing left to fear here. No labor waiting, no priest watching, no rats in the corner. Just stillness, just breath, just rest. The world is still filthy, of course. But tonight, you aren't. Tonight, you're clean. Tonight, you're safe. And most of all, you are far, far away from the revolting world of medieval hygiene. You don't have to wake up in that past. You don't have to pick straw from your tunic, or wipe soot from your eyes, or drink beer just to stay alive. You don't have to whisper to saints while your fever climbs. You don't have to lie on a dirt floor and wonder if that sound outside is a fox or a man with a knife. Because tonight, you are here, wrapped in your blanket, resting in a bed that doesn't itch, breathing clean air, and drifting toward dreams where no one's boiling cabbage. So go ahead, close your eyes, let the noise of the past fall away, let the medieval filth fade behind you like a bad dream at sunrise. You are warm, you are calm, you are clean. And tonight, as you drift off, remember, you don't have to wake up in 1347. Sleep well,